Okay.
I'm going to kick off.
Take away, Penny.
Okay. The first thing I've got is that the oven is on gas mark 4, which is about 180C. I have here a large box of my 4 chopped leeks, and they are very finely chopped. You know, I'm talking about a couple of millimeters wide, and it's all sorry, I'm not saying that very well clearly. I've pushed all the rings out. So I've got this whole box of little rings of leek, which have been washed a couple of times, because the worst thing is grit. And I'm going to pop that in the box with the lid just open. I use ice cream boxes all the time. I'm going to pop that in the microwave, and that's going to cook while we do other things. So just going to pop that in on probably high.
For how long?
I have no idea. I'm going to put it on. I'm just going to put it on until I can smell it and hear it, and then I'll go and give it a feel in a minute.
All
okay.
right.
Now, what we're going to do today is, and you know, I've done all this stuff called baking blind. We're actually going to do baking blind. And here in front of me, I have, you can hear it, that's a loose-bottomed metal flan tin, and it's about a 10-inch diameter, which if you're a metric, you can work out for yourselves. And I have here some pastry that I made, oh gosh, some weeks ago. It's been frozen, and it's just come out of the freezer last night. It's defrosted in the fridge, and I'm taking it out of the plastic bag that I froze it in. And when I freeze pastry, I don't do it as a ball, because that's just going to make it more difficult to roll out later, to handle later. I freeze it as a disc, you know, so it doesn't have to be, this is about, three centimeters thick. And I'm just doing it so it's more manageable at this stage. I have a little dusting pot of flour, brackets, gosh knows, I don't know whether it's self-raising or plain. So I'm just putting that on to my surface and onto the bread, onto the pastry, and I'm pressing the pastry out with the flat of my hand just to make it more spreadable.
It's not going straight into the flan thing, is it? You're using the board first, yeah?
Yep, that's exactly what I'm going to say. I've got here on my work surface a silicon mat. It's a silicon rolling mat. And the reason you don't need to use that, but I find that one, I use less flour for my rolling, and two, because I'm a blind person too, I can scoop up all my bits and pieces, all my bits of flour, and carry them more neatly to the washing up. And I haven't made such a complete pig's breakfast of my work surface. So for me, one of the major things about cooking is keeping everything clean, because I find it is so easy for me to make an awful mess. If somebody else has got some great tips about not making a mess, we'd be lovely to hear from you. So I'm rolling this out.
My pastry.
She said she's got a shop bought pastry, but that would still work.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've kind of pushed the boat out. I've kind of done it in advance.
You are very well organised. What I'm going to do is we're going to get this flan underway, and then I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you a different pastry that you might want to try making, rather than short crust. So I now have my pastry rolled out, and they all say, oh, roll it over the rolling pin and put it in. I find that too difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it another dust of flour. I can hear microwaves going.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm just cooking my veg.
And okay. I think Cypria's just putting hers in the microwave. So
that's okay. Okay, so I'm taking this pastry and I'm folding it away. It's a rough circle. I'm folding it away from me. So I've got it in half, just folding, and then I'm folding the right-hand half over the left-hand side. So what I've really done is folded it into quarters so I can lift the whole lot on my hand so I can feel where I'm putting this pastry. And there it is. I'm putting that middle point into the middle of my baking tin, and then I'm unfolding it. And I find that way of doing it much, much simpler to handle. Right, I am now going to put away my silicone mat, because I don't need that anymore, my rolling pin, in the washing up. Coming back to my case, I now have it covered in pastry, and the pastry is hanging over the edges. So I'm very gently going round, pushing it down all around the edges on the inside, so that this pastry tart case is slightly fluted. So I'm just using the edges, and that fluting just gives me a bit more support for the pastry going in. Okay, that is all done. I'm taking a knife and I'm going to just roughly trim it around the outside. You can do fine trimming later on. We can do, in fact, I'm just tearing it. It's very simple. This pastry, I will re-chill what the leftovers. I will re-chill and probably roll out and make another little tiny tart later on. And today we're making leek because I thought that was just easy and simple. But you can do it with all sorts of vegetables and other meats or whatever you like. We made a really nice asparagus and ham one the other day. I've done leek and mushroom. The important thing, I've used courgettes. I've used Mediterranean vegetables with peppers, courgettes, leeks, tomatoes, all those sorts of things, a few black olives. The key thing is that the vegetables need to be cooked beforehand. Well, I'm just going to check my leeks. Right, I'm just left those out of the microwave. They're pretty well cooked. I don't want them down to an absolute mush because I want some texture in this tart. Now, baking blind. First thing for baking blind, I've got this tart tin lined with pastry. I've got a fork and I'm just going to poke it over in rows, 1, 2, 3. And I'm just going through the bottom of the tart tin of the pastry. And that is to make sure that any air underneath the pastry can get out. Now, for most people, when they do baking blind, they use something like parchment paper and baking beans. Should have put some. For me as a blind person, baking beans are a complete nightmare because you have to find them. And I'll tell you what, if you've made this delicious tart and you've left a bean in there by mistake and somebody crunches on it, it's a tooth gone.
I would say it'd be a visit to the dentist, wouldn't it?
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. I have done it. I didn't lose the tooth, but I did, because most of these baking beans are actually made out of clay. So what I'm doing is I am pressing this foil over the bottom of the tart tin, and it will overlap a bit. You know, we're only using, say, an inch or so overlapping the edge of the tart, and I'm just tearing that off, and I'm actually using that torn off piece to patch up where the foil wasn't wide enough. So what's that ending up with is all my pastry is now protected with foil, and also the foil is pressed firmly into the corners of the tart tin all around the circumference, so that will help it keep its shape. And that is as simple as that. Okay, that is now going into the oven.
Penny, before you do that, would you hold it up to the camera so everyone could just see?
I'll hold mine up as well.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, super. Yeah, yep. That's right. Yeah.
Alexa, yep. Set timer 12 minutes. Ashton, you need to be able to feel the bottom of the pastry through the foil with your fingers, and also into the corners.
Yes.
So you'll think about it as relining that case with foil.
Yeah. I think I've got there now. Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
So 12 minutes, Ashton.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what I've got next is a box. One of my wonderful Lakeland boxes, which I just live with. And I'm going to break into here 4 eggs. Right, 4 eggs in there. And what I've got somewhere here is a pastry brush. Let me just see if I can find it. I've got my fork. I'm going to use that. So I'm beating my eggs in this box. And the reason I like the boxes is because I can put a lid on them so I don't knock it over and make more mess. And also because you can pour reasonably well from the corner. So that is that. I'm just going to get some creme fraiche out of the fridge. What's going to happen is we are going to take the the pastry case will be part cooked. We're going to take it out of the oven after 12 minutes, remove the foil, which is an important bit, and then we're going to brush the bottom of the pastry with that beaten egg.
Right.
Okay, and then it goes back into the oven for another 3 minutes. And then when it comes out, we're going to brush it again. And what we're doing is we're waterproofing the bottom.
So you don't get a soggy bottom then?
Don't get a soggy bottom. What you get is a bottom that feels quite shiny, quite smooth. And then what I would normally have done with this pastry is once I'd rolled it out, I would have chilled it for half an hour before I put it in the oven. And I would normally make this pastry case and cook it at least half an hour, if not an hour, before I finish the tart, because it just gives time for the pastry to relax, the gluten to develop, and it just becomes firmer. But this will work just as well doing it all in one go. And if you've got time and all the rest of it against you, then this works really well. So can anybody think of any other ingredients we could put into this pastry case that you might like to try?
Ooh. Could you make a sweet pie or something, or tart or something with this?
Absolutely. And one of the things we were talking about in September was using apple. This is our next session. So I was going to make Christmas mincemeat, but also with this, I would make an apple puree to put in the bottom of this flan once I've cooked the pastry. And then, so that's cooked, the puree. And then I would put layers of eating apples over the top sprinkle it with a bit of sugar, perhaps a couple of knobs of butter, throw it back in the oven for, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, just to cook the apples on the top. And there you've got a French apple tart.
Oh, lovely.
But you could also use this for all sorts of other things. So like a lemon meringue pie, often with a lemon meringue pie, you might have made like a lemon curd type filling.
Oh, I love lemon curd.
And you pour that in, and then you put your meringue on top, because the lemon curd is cooked, meringue on the top, whack it back in the oven. So this that's why I wanted us to do this pastry case in this way, because then you can make so many other things with it.
So versatile, isn't it? Because you could turn it into a quiche as well, couldn't you? By adding
Absolutely.
cheese.
And that's really what we're making is, so, you know, I said before that I made it with asparagus and ham. You could add cheese. I don't eat cheese, so I always forget about cheese. Yeah. But there's lots and lots of things that you can make with it. But the key thing is that you need your ingredients that are going to go in to be pretty much cooked. So when I made the asparagus one, I had cooked the asparagus in the microwave for a few minutes. They were hot, they were still crunchy, but they weren't raw. And so they're not going to cook an enormous amount more in the tart. Okay, well, I'm sitting here. What I'm going to do while we're standing around is get my leeks, if I can find them. Yep. And there may be some more water in here, and they're quite hot. So what I might do is I might just run some cold water through them to chill them down. And the reason I'm doing this is these are so hot. Normally I would have done this a bit earlier. They're so hot that there's a risk that they'll start melting the pastry, even though it's partly cooked. So I'm going to run water through them and then squeeze them hard to get as much liquid out of them as I can, because I want them pretty dry. I'm going to add an egg and creme fraiche mixed to the tart. But if I have too much water from the leeks, it'll make it all a bit too runny and it won't set so well. So give me a moment's space. I would definitely put herbs in for some of these dishes. So I would put in thyme, perhaps some rosemary, all sorts of things, whatever you have to hand.
It's surprising by using the dry, well, fresh herbs if you've got them, but if not, even the dry herbs, in just a teaspoon or half a teaspoon in with your flan, it changes the flavour of it completely. So you can have the same basis, but by just changing the herbs, just changes that flavour slightly. So,
I mean, what you could do with this flan is use tomatoes and basil. Tomatoes, you might just cut in half. You could have put them on a tray in the oven with the pastry case, and then they come out, pop them all over the bottom of the pastry case when it's finished, tear up some basil over the top, pour over your egg custard. Yeah, I'll tell you what else we've been making recently, or I'm experimenting with. I don't know whether I told you, we make our own yogurt here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's dead easy, but I have this thing called a sous vide, which is a water bath that has, you can set the temperature on it and it controls the temperature.
Okay.
So what I've been trying now is making creme fraiche.
Ooh.
And it was okay, but it wasn't fabulous. So I'm going to try that again. But today I've got shop bought creme fraiche. But really, it's not much more than double cream with some yogurt stirred into it and left for the yogurt to slightly cheesify the cream. So eminently tryable. But we make yogurt all the time. And do you remember we used yogurt to make the soda bread?
Oh, yeah.
And I use actually not even yogurt to make soda bread. I use the strainings. When we take the yogurt out of the water bath, we put it through muslin, and so it thickens it as the liquid comes out. And I use that straining liquid to make soda bread, and that's really successful. Right, here comes.
Oh. Oh.
Now I'm just going to put this on the work surface on a silicone mat. It's jolly hot, so be careful. I'm going to remove gently that foil, throw that away. I'm just going to feel it, and you can feel that it's starting to set on the bottom. It's not quite there. It's just slightly bubbling. So I'm just running my fingers over it, just feeling it, but it's okay. So now my box of, I put it down. Sorry, this is me trying to find my box of egg.
Your sous chef not with you today, Penny?
He's off doing other meaningful things.
Oh.
I've just heard from the sidelines. He's here, standing by.
Oh.
Little pastry brush. Don't be mean with this. Paste. You think about emulsioning a wall, and you're going all across the bottom of your pastry and all up the sides, because you don't want soggy sides any more than you want a soggy bottom. And we don't think you're going to use all this egg doing this, because you're going to use some of it for making the custard to go in afterwards. But as we've got the eggs all beaten up, it's a good use of them in the first place. So that is me brushing my base, pastry brush back in the eggs, picking up the tart, damn hot, be careful.
Mm-hmm.
Alexa, set timer, 3 minutes.
3 minutes, starting now.
Right. In a minute, I am going to show you this other pastry. And this is a pastry that, if I said takes 3 days to make, you'll think, oh my goodness, who wants to faff around for 3 days? But actually, it's incredibly simple. And what you do over those 3 days takes about 5 minutes each day. And so what we're going to start off with is the first day is you take the right amount of butter, and I've just used half a pack of butter. I've cut it in half in the paper, just bang, and it's just gone straight into the freezer. So I'm going to have rock hard butter coming out in a minute. And we're going to grate that, and then it goes back into the freezer to freeze for another 24 hours. So that's your first 5 minutes. And then I've weighed out my flour and my salt, and that is already in the fridge, and it's been in the fridge in a box, those fateful boxes, for 24 hours or more. So do you know that lots of people worry about making pastry, and they say, oh, we've got too hot hands and all the rest of it. What I find is if you chill the flour and you're using frozen butter, it makes it so much easier, and you're never going to get into those problems of all the fat melting all over your hands. So that's what we'll make once this tart's in the oven. So chat amongst yourselves. Tell me your life story.
Oh.
Well, I must admit, Penny, you mentioned about lemon curd, like the lemon curd in a meringue.
Yep.
And I actually made some lemon curd for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and I was pleasantly surprised how quick and easy it is to make lemon curd. And actually, it tastes so much better than maybe the shop bought lemon curds that you can.
Shop bought.
Oh, well, no, because I always thought it was a big process and it was a hard thing to do. But I was pleasantly surprised how quick, within 10 minutes, it was made, and it was like it in the jars cooling.
Yes.
And if I tried it years ago, I wouldn't be buying the shop version. So I would recommend anybody who wants to try making lemon curd. It is really quite easy. The recipe I used.
On my Baking Blind YouTube channel, there is me making lemon curd in the jungle in Costa Rica.
Oh, right.
What I've just done is I now have my tart tin with the pastry inside it, taken it out of the oven, and I have just brushed it again with beaten egg. And that beaten egg is cooking as soon as it hits the tart tin, just about. And I'm putting my fingers into it, and it's just slightly tacky, but that's only been on for a few seconds. And as I touch it, it's cooking. So again, you've double waterproofed the bottom of this tin, this pastry. Okay, let me just finish this and we'll come back to lemon curd. I am now going to fill this with my strands of leek. And I said 4 leeks, but it's quite difficult to know how big your leeks are, how big your tart tin is. So I'm going to fill it to a sensible level. If there's some left over, well, you can dress it with vinaigrette and it makes a very nice salad. Now, one of the other things we're going to do in a minute is we are going to put this whole tart into a big foil parcel. And there are 2 reasons for that. One, I want to protect what is left, the pastry, which is going to be round the rim, which has already had 2 cooks, and it's going to go back into the oven for some time. So I'm trying to not get it overcooked. The other thing is that I'm a blind person. And I tell you what, moving a tart full of egg custard into an oven is completely fraught with problems. And it's really likely that I'm going to spill it. So I do not want, as I had the other day, an oven full of egg custard. And it all trickled down into my drawer underneath the oven with all my baking trays in it. So I had to get the whole lot out and wash them. But by putting it into a parcel, if you do have any spills and thrills, it'll go into the bottom of the parcel. So there is, I think that's probably enough leek, which is probably, I've probably used 3.5 of my leeks. I've got some left over. So Alan can turn that into a leek salad later on. Okay, I am now going to take some more foil, and this is a big piece of foil. Think of it, it's probably 1 meter long. And I don't care if I'm being generous with it because I want to avoid spills. I'm laying that on the work surface. My tart is going on top of it. Okay, let's finish the filling. So I've got, do you remember we had those eggs that we've been beating up? So I'm going to take the pastry brush out. That's going in the washing up.
Any salt and pepper, Penny?
Good clue. I have salted. I am about to find my pepper grinder. Do you know, this is when I could do with my sous chef, but he's, got it. I don't know whether you've got one of these. This is a pepper mill, which is electrically operated. It's got batteries in it. And the reason I have that is I can operate it with one hand and hold my dish, my bowl, in this case, my box with the other. So I'm not grinding pepper all over the table or the work surface. So I'm going to give this a really good grind of black pepper. I'm going to pop in my creme fraiche into the box, and I'm using probably a couple of heaped tablespoons. Now you could use cream for this. You could use milk, but I wouldn't use very much because it'll be too much liquid. Because the creme fraiche or cream have got more fat content, it's going to be easier to handle.
Would you say double cream or the extra thick cream would be better?
You could. This is a whisk, and if I press it down, can you hear it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So as it goes up and down, that's beating the eggs and the creme fraiche together. And I'll be honest with you, I'm just checking with the fingertip to make sure I've got a reasonable consistency, because I can't see. And sometimes we just need to feel that we need our clean hands. Right, there's that coming out. I'm just going to rinse my hands. Right, here's the tricky bit for those who can't see. I've got my box. I've got my waterproof pastry case. I've got it full of leeks. And I am now very gently, and I am again going to be using my hands to judge the height of what goes in here. Oh God, I can feel breathlessness, and I feel the same. Okay, that's pretty good. And of course, it's soaking in between the bits of leek as it goes, and I'm just giving it a gentle little ease into all the little leek crevices. And Alan I can feel him standing here looking at this and going, oh my goodness.
No, I'm standing here thinking, that's going to be delicious.
Now at this stage, you could put some grated cheese on the top, if you like cheese. Right, rinsed hands. I'm now going to make my parsley. So I'm folding up my foil down to either side. And I'm not trying to make this a tight parcel because there's quite a lot of steam to come out of this. We're just trying to make something that protects our pastry. So I'm folding it around the pastry and allows the heat to get in. Okay, I'm going to put this back in the oven, or Alan would if he was here, but he's not, so I'm going to do it myself. This is the tricky bit. Be careful.
Sorry, do you put the foil on the top of the tart?
My head's in the oven.
Sorry.
That's okay. Alexa, set timer 40 minutes. So what I did, I had foil, a long piece of foil under the pastry case.
Oh, right.
Which I had then filled. And then the long bits at either end of the pastry case, I brought up either end into the middle, just loosely folded it over, brought the foil all the way around the tart tin, so it just protected the pastry a little bit more.
So it's a bit of a tent around it, is it? It's a sort of tent, I believe.
Like a tent, but it's a tent with a ground sheet.
Ah.
Because for us, we're using the ground sheet to catch any of the spills and thrills we have.
Oh, I see. I get you.
You with me?
Yeah.
Because we're putting quite a lot of liquid in that tart, and I am really conscious that I might spill it. So now it's gone into the oven for 40 minutes. Right, here we go. So I have here a little bag of pastry. Here is actually really handy. It's a plastic oval dish bowl, and on top of it goes the grater. So it clips on, so my gratings go into the bowl, so I can't lose them.
Oh, I've got one of those.
What I'm using here is a coarse grater, the sort of thing you'd use for carrots, for coarse cheese, not what you'd grate nutmeg on. So I always have frozen butter in the freezer to make this pastry. And I first saw it, I think Delia made it years and years ago on television, and it was made by John Tovey, who had a very famous restaurant up in the Lake District. But I've also made it in America. When I was cooking in San Francisco, this was what the chap there called Mac, who was a pastry chef, was calling his pie dough. So it's pretty much that recipe. And so what I've got here, this is what, about 4 ounces of butter. Those who are metric can translate that. Just grating it. And you can see it doesn't take very long, except when you're watching me do it, when it probably takes for ages. Now this pastry I'm making today, I'm making with half butter to flour. So 4 ounces of butter, 8 ounces of flour, or the metric equivalent. You could increase the fat content of this pastry if you wanted something richer. So firstly, you could make it more like 2/3 or 3/4 fat to flour. What I've also done in the past is added a little lard to it as well.
Oh.
Now, one of the things about lard is it's better on water content. So therefore you can coat the flour molecules with the lard, and that stops the gluten reacting so quickly to the water in your butter. Right, is that butter grated?
So is it unsalted butter you use, Penny, or salted?
I confess it's not. It's just what I get from my local butcher, because I try to support a local producer, and that's all he produces. The difference, I think, with unsalted butter is that it has less water content in it, so it's more solid fat. Now, what you can hear me doing is shaking my little grater container into a plastic bag. So I'm putting the butter into the plastic bag. And I'm not doing it very ceremoniously, it's just getting slopped in there, because in a minute you'll see what happens when it comes out. So you don't need to be very refined at this stage. So into a plastic bag, I will clip it. Alan will clip it. My darling, can you clip that, put it in the freezer, and bring me the other bag of frozen butter? Okay, in this box here, another of these famous Lakeland boxes, I have my 8 ounces of flour, and that's been in the fridge for 24 hours, overnight, whatever you like. And it's got a teaspoonful of salt in it. Into a bowl, bonk. may I take that? Here is my frozen butter. So that was I'd grated this a couple of days ago. It's been back in the freezer. It is frozen again, and it's going in. Really complicated way of making pastry, isn't it?
Mm.
If I was using lard, I'd have probably rubbed in about 50 grams of lard into the flour before the butter goes in. And now I'm just going in with my hands, just breaking this up, rubbing it through. It's all quite cold. I'm breaking down the bits of butter. And what I'm looking for is, you know, when you make short crust pastry, and that's, they say rub it in, so it's like fine breadcrumbs. This is not going to be such fine breadcrumbs. This is going to be quite a rough pastry in feel. You don't want the bits of butter too tiny. But because it's been refrozen, some of it's just clumped up a bit. So I'm just breaking that down. And this makes a sort of rough puff pastry. So it will have a little bit of that extra crunch that you get from puff pastry that you don't get in short crust. So that's the difference with making it like this. But it really takes very little effort, and you just need to pre-plan a little bit and you're there. So I'm nearly got this done, and I'm just running it through my fingers, mixing the butter, breaking down the butter, mixing it with the flour, getting it to a reasonably even mix. I haven't got a whole big lump of butter in one corner and a big pile of flour in the other, but it's all nicely integrated. But the butter is still, it's smaller, sorry, than pea size. I'm trying to think about what you know, a grain of rice. Think about it as the size of a grain of rice. And I'm just rubbing that in now. Okay. I'm sorry, this is going to take much quicker than I thought it was going to take. Okay, so that is now pretty much there. I have here an egg. I'm going to break into a bowl. And into that, I am going to put a bit of cold water. And you're going to ask me how much, and I'm going to say, oh, a slug. Because I don't know. I'm actually just going to put this under the tap. 1, 2. Is that much? 1, 2 under the tap. So now I'm just going to break that egg up in that little bit of water. And now I find my bowl, I have my bowl. I'm going to put in half that egg mix, not go mad because I need to get a sense of how wet it's getting. So I'm just in with my fingers, but you could use a palette knife here. And often I use my hand like a claw. So I've got my fingers bent at the 1-2nd joint, and I'm just using that to do the mixing, a bit more egg going in, rather than getting it touching my palm of my hand. I'm a really hot person, and so it's very easy for me to get things melting all over the place. Right, last of the egg, I might need a bit more water. Yep, I think I do. I'm going to go back to the tap, put a bit more in my bowl, slush out the last bit of egg. Put in half of that. Now, the other great tip if you're making pastry when you're getting to this final stage of adding liquid and you don't know how much to put in, is to have your bowl of water on the side next to you and actually put your hand into the water, get your hand wet or put some water on your hand and sprinkle it in. Because what you don't want to do is pour water into the bottom of your bowl so its pastry is sitting there in a puddle.
That makes sense, actually, because otherwise it gets really slimy, doesn't it, on the outside?
It does. I'm going to put in the rest of that water. And I do it over my hand so it's just taking it off my fingertips. And really, the palm of my right hand that I'm using to do this mixing is pretty clean. Now, the more fat you use in a pastry, the more you need to chill it. So with this, when I've finished making it, I will put it in a plastic bag, and I might actually just freeze this. And it's just about coming together. And I'm not really using force, I'm just pulling it against the side of the bowl, taking it off my fingertips. So I would chill this certainly covered or in a plastic bag. And again, I would chill it like a disc, not as a ball. And then I would use it after it's chilled for at least half an hour. If I was making a tart like today, I would roll it out, put the foil on it, do all the forking on the bottom, and then I would chill it for another half hour before it went into the oven. And that is that pastry made. And how easy was that? Is anybody out there who wants to be brave enough to say, I couldn't do that? Are you still there?
I would say that I've never tried to make it. So, because I've always thought it comes across as being quite complicated, and I would take the Ashton route and buy it. But now you've shown me, Penny,
yeah.
I will promise I will have a go at this and see how I get on.
That easy.
I must say, I think I probably might have a go at it as well.
Yeah, it's worth a go, Ashton, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When
by doing it this way, you're going, Alan, can you pass me a plastic bag, please? You've got clean hands.
Sorry, Hilary, you were saying?
Yeah, I think I've had that old Delia Smith recipe book, because I tried freezing the butter and then grating it, but I must be a very hot person as well, because I found that quite a lot of the butter just melted onto my hand whilst I was grating it, and I just felt so mucky. I thought, oh no, buying pastry is easier.
It's a different thing, to be honest, bought pastry.
Yeah.
It's just different. It's nothing right with it, wrong with it.
No, it's consistent, but not special.
Yes, if you're buying pastry, I would always recommend you buy pre-rolled, because if you're paying them to make the damn stuff, why don't you pay them to roll it out, and then you haven't got to roll out, clean everything up.
Yes.
And it is the story of my life, getting clean and all the rest of it. Right, I'm just going to go and rinse my hands.
I was speaking to Carol, because I know Carol's just about to say something.
Yes, I haven't baked long, because I know I'm a very slow worker.
No, that's fine. But has it been easy enough to follow?
How do you grate your fat right to the end without grating your fingers?
Practice. Turn it over, and the last bit you just give a good squidge to.
I have actually made pastry that way. I used to do it that way many years ago.
Yes.
I think before you could buy pastry.
Yes.
And it does work very well. But these days, I'm afraid I buy it
Well, I think I probably make it because I don't go to shops very often, and certainly not with all this COVID stuff.
No.
And my butcher come greengrocer, he sells butter, and he will deliver my order every week, all the meat and veg and fruit and butter and cheese and things like that.
Yeah.
In the old days, he'd come in and put it away in the fridge in the right place. So he's valuable. And I'll have to retrain him once COVID's over.
Yeah, I was going to say you trained him well.
Oh, yeah. It helps that we had the same fridge, so he recognised it and he could understand it, because I was going to say he's a man, but no, he's a very capable person. So giving him the same piece of equipment certainly assisted him. Any other questions about pastries?
Penny, you said about trimming the pastry again once you baked it blind. When I've tried doing that, I sometimes, as I get it out of the oven, I'll knock the case, and so I'll knock a chunk off. Or when I've tried cutting to sort of neaten the edges, then again, I don't know whether I've baked it slightly too long and it's just gone too crisp to cut.
You might have left too much pastry round the edge. Yeah. The first thing, which is oh gosh, sorry, that's just the washing up. So that means it's catching more. I think the other thing is, for me, to go around with a knife would be far too ambitious. I would go around with fingernails and actually pinch it off when it's cooked. And then you're just much more in control of it when you can't see, hacking at it with a knife. When it's all a bit brittle, it's not going to be so easy. The other thing, of course, is you might try it when it's so hot that it's more likely to come away easily. When it gets colder, it's going to be more solid. So do it quite quickly.
Okay, yeah.
One of the things that you may have noticed today is I'm cooking at gas mark 4, which I think is 180 degrees. But we can get Alexa to check, which is quite cool for pastry.
Yes.
Lots of people would be saying, oh, gas mark 6 and whatever that is, or Celsius. I find this a much more controllable temperature to do this sort of pastry. So other people may have been cooking pastry quite hot. And
I certainly have, yes.
Yes. If it works for you, it works for you.
Yeah, gas mark 4 is 180 degrees. I've just checked it.
Our own oven and knowing how it cooks and where it cooks, which is a big to do. What else could you make with pastry?
The list is endless.
Yes, it is. It is. We've talked about tarts, and this pastry works well with tarts, and you can do them sweet and savoury. I like a custard, which is what we've used with the creme fraiche and the eggs. And you can make a sweet custard. So you can make, have you heard of tarte au citron? So that's a lemon tart. And you make that with cream, eggs, and lemon juice and lemon zest. You have to be really careful about the temperature with that, because you do not want to get the temperature of that custard above 70 degrees. Otherwise, you have lemon scrambled eggs.
Oh,
not to be commended. But again, I have made that in the sous vide, which is, as I said, this water bath where you can control the temperature. So I just put the whole lot mixed up, give it a good whizzing, pour it into a plastic bag, non-hygienically suck the air out of the plastic bag, clip it off, toss it in, and let it sit there for an hour or so at 70 degrees. It won't go higher than that, but it will cook it. So that's really well. And then I would just pour it into the pastry case that we've pre-cooked, as you saw today. And then it cools and chills in the fridge. And there you are. What was your uncle tart au citron.
With the pastry, would you be able to make pies with this pastry? I know you were talking about tarts. And yeah.
So one of the things I've done is I use this pastry and I make steak and kidney pies. So I'd made the steak and kidney filling separately. So I just put it in a casserole, lobbed it in the oven, cooked it gently for however long, or I might have put it in the sous vide and cooked it in there. And then when it's cool, I use little foil pie dishes because they're really handy. So I line the bottom of the pie dish with the pastry, put in a blob or so of filling, put another lot on the top of pastry, crimp it all off, throw it in the freezer, cook from frozen, 45 minutes, done.
Yeah.
So I have stacks of those in the freezer because I tend to batch cook. So, you know, I've made this pastry today. I wouldn't freeze tarts with the egg custard filling because that will start separating. But chicken and mushroom pie, I would make like this. My classic one is I would use a bit of cream and a bit of stock. I would chop up my mushrooms and put them in that and heat it up. And so that the mushrooms are just about cooked. And then I would take very small slithers of chicken, you know, enough for a small forkful. And I would put those into the hot stock and cream, which has got salt and pepper and put some herbs and things like that, and take it off the heat. Because the residual heat of the stock and cream will cook the chicken enough. Then you chill it down, put it in, you know, the pies again. So pastry bottom in a foil container, put in some of the mix, and then put on the pastry case, freeze it, again, cook from frozen 45 minutes, or cook straight away, obviously. Thicken your gravies up with a bit of corn flour. Works deliciously. I make the best chicken and mushroom pies I know. And this is a really nice pastry for it.
Yeah.
When I was in San Francisco, I was making peach galettes. So with this pastry, he'd rolled it out into circles, and then he took some fresh peaches and took out the stones, just chopped them up roughly, rolled them in a bit of sugar, put a handful in the middle of the circle, folded up the edges, so then crimped them together. So it was a sort of homemade pie, really, but without any much shape. Threw them in the oven, done. So you can do lots and lots of different things with this sort of pastry. I inspired you a little bit to have a go.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I certainly have.
I think it'd be one of those things, like you say, that if you can make little parcels, I mean, it's just ideal, isn't it? Especially if you've got visitors coming, that even like with Christmas, you could use turkey and cranberry, and you can just adapt them, couldn't you? Just to have them as like hors d'oeuvres or.
When I was, I had friends, a lot of friends around for lunch the other week, and I'd done coronation turkey as the main course, and I wanted a vegetarian alternative. So I made a leek and mushroom tart, just as we've made today. I pre-cooked the mushrooms. I'd probably just throw them in the microwave again. Mixed them up with the leek, salt and pepper, exactly the same, cooked it. And I cooked it on that morning because this sort of tart, quiche, whatever you want to call it, is best served fresh, best served warm, not hot. You want it all to relax a bit. So if I'm cooking this today, you know, it'll be okay for a late lunch today or okay for supper. But I probably don't want to chill it straight away because it will do different things. The coldness will change the liquid content in it. It'll start separating out a bit.
One thing I have as an issue, Penny, is that a lot of these pies and tarts can so easily be family sized, and I'm cook for myself.
Yes.
So I would only want to make either batches of small amounts or just a small pie or something like that. So.
Okay, well, let me tell you what I have is I talked to you about the little foil dishes. You can buy those, and they're about 3-4 inches across, so you can use those. I also have some, remember I was using a big metal loose bottom tin. I have small loose bottom tins, which are about 3 or 4 inches across. And I've got in the freezer now is one of those with its pastry case in it. It's been cooked, it's been egged, and then recooked with its 3 minutes, then re-brushed with egg. When it was cold, just tossed it in the freezer. So therefore I can get those out. I can fill them with, a bit of ham, a bit of asparagus, and an egg custard, and throw them straight into the oven, and they're done. So you can pre-batch them like that.
Okay.
And then you can make different ones. A really lovely filling is with some smoked salmon or some smoked trout. Just chop that up small, make an egg custard, perhaps some chopped fennel, the fronds of the fennel, or some chopped dill, or some other herbs, perhaps a grating or the zest of a lemon. And that's a delicious tart. You could serve that to anyone.
Sounds fantastic. Yeah,
Yep.
that sounds good.
So
what I do is I'll find a link to some smaller loose bottom flan tins or tart tins, and I'll send it on with the video clip next week so that you can have a look at some links of where you can buy them.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the other thing is, and I know this probably sounds utterly disreputable, but if you buy bought pies that are in a foil tin, there's no reason why you shouldn't reuse that foil tin once it's been, well washed. Because often you don't want to buy a whole stack of foil dishes or whatever when you may only use them once while you're just experimenting. So if you want to just try something, be economic while you're experimenting. So, can I tell you about another recipe?
What's that?
Well, I made the most delicious apple cake.
Oh, wow.
Alan, can you come and present the apple cake and show people the apple cake? I'm afraid it's got a big wedge cut out of it.
That's because Penny couldn't resist trying it last night.
Oh, wow.
I wouldn't be able to resist that either. It's wonderful.
That looks lovely.
It is, it's delicious.
Someone tell me what it looks like.
I'm going to publish, I don't know whether any of you can ever see my blog or go on my Facebook page. So I'm going to publish that recipe this week. And what's happening is we're starting to get windfalls from the apple trees in the garden. And so, waste not, want not. I don't like to throw things away. So I've taken the apples, peeled them. And the most important thing is that you make this cake rather like the pastry we've done today. So what I did is I had the flour and the sugar, a bit of salt, and some butter, and I rubbed it in together as you would make a pastry. So it comes out like these rough breadcrumbs. Then I added in some chopped dates and some chopped walnuts and just stirred them all in. And then I added in the chopped apple. And I'm making apple pieces about the size of my thumbnail, which is not a long thumbnail, just, half an inch in all directions sort of thing. And so the apples are going into this dry mix. And that's important because the apples are going to give up a lot of water. And so you want them not to sink, but also to have that flour all around them. So you mix it all together and then you beat up well, can't remember. I think it was 4 eggs and a bit of vanilla extract. Beat that up, mix it all in. And I did this all by hand because it's quicker to do it like that, makes less mess, in a big bowl. And then Alan helped me put handfuls into a silicone mold. And with this recipe, I used a ring mold, which I particularly like because with a ring mold, it's got a hole in the middle, basically. And that means you can get more heat into the middle. And that cake was cooked for at gas mark 3, which is, I think it was about 165, for about 110 minutes. And the point is that you're putting into this mix a lot of cold, wet apple. So it takes a long time for that apple to heat up and get to a cooked temperature. And I like my cakes to get to about 95 degrees centigrade. And I use my cooking thermometer, which I think you've seen before, which is like a long probe with a talking thermometer on the end of it. So I always check my cakes are about 95 degrees. That means the sugar and everything is just about where I want it to be. And it took a long time. I had to cover it with a double layer of foil after about an hour. But it's just a lot of cold ingredients that need to take a long time to come up to temperature. So that was a really good way of using up bits of apple. You could have it as a pudding with custard, or you could have it just as a really naughty cake. And it is delicious. Yeah. And that's, you know, I'm embarrassed to tell you how much butter and sugar and flour I've been using to cook with the last couple of days by the time we've done that and this flan today. My darling, who had 7 minutes on their time?
I've got on time here.
Oh, how are we doing?
Got 4 now.
4.
I set a timer on my watch. You've got about 2.5 minutes left, Penny, for you.
Okay, so 2.5 minutes left for questions, questions to me, suggestions, better ideas. Who knows something cleverer than I've done today? I bet most of you do.
Penny, you mentioned about the lemon curd. Sorry, yes. You mentioned about your lemon curd, because obviously I brought mine up, we'll say boil, it was up to a simmer.
What was up to a simmer?
The
water underneath.
No, see, the recipe I used, it was just done in a saucepan, and it was on a low heat. You had the sugar, the butter, and the lemon juice until the sugar dissolved and the butter melted.
Yep.
Then you turn to while that was happening, you I beat the the lemon rind, so there's lemon zest, sorry. And then I beat the eggs until they were literally whisked very well. So there was no stringy bits.
Yes.
And then you take the temperature up to medium, add the eggs, but continue to whisk while that's happening until it starts a slow simmer. And then you just carry on and mix in for another minute. And then you pour it out and it turns into lemon curd.
I think that sounds an amazing recipe. And I'm hugely impressed that you've managed to do it. I would never be that bold. So one day we ought to get you to demonstrate it.
Ooh, okay. Maybe it was just a fluke, then it was good for me. But yeah, I'm happy to do that one day.
Yeah. The lemon curd I've made, the key things are about having the ingredients at room temperature. So you're not trying to manage cold eggs, cold butter, cold lemon.
Yeah.
I would make it over a pan of water, because one of the things with eggs is once they start going, they've gone. And so you've lost a lot. You know, if you get it wrong and you cook the eggs too far, you have lemon scrambled eggs.
Yeah.
Which is not very nice.
No.
So the reason you would normally do it over with a bowl that's sitting over a pan of hot water, and the hot water is simmering, but you don't let the bottom of the bowl touch the hot water, because otherwise it's transferring. Simmering water is 100 degrees. Eggs are probably cooking at 70 degrees. So you need to keep that level of separation. So you were immensely lucky.
Yeah, sounds it.
Right, how is that done?
I think your flan should be out now, Penny.
Mine's just finished.
I've just felt mine. It's still liquid in the middle. I'm going to put it back for another 5 minutes. You don't have to hang around to chat to me while I do that. It's up to you entirely. But I want the middle to feel soft and semi-liquid, like soft scrambled eggs.
Yeah, mine does.
And then it will, as it cools, it will finish firming up. What I'm trying to do here is to keep the moistness in. Is that Ashton?
Yes.
How's it going? Tell us about yours.
Yes, it smells very nice, I must say. Like you say, it does feel soft in the middle, like a bit like scrambled. Is that how it's supposed to be?
Yeah, I think so. It will, as it cools, it will just firm up.
Yes.
So, you're not going to hopefully eat it straight away.
So Ashton, that looks delicious. Well done.
Thank you.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
What time's lunch, Ashton?
In a minute, I think. Mind you, I was going to have it for tea tonight.
It'll be perfect. Just leave it out on the side, covered.
Yeah.
At room temperature. It'll be lovely. How difficult was that?
Not difficult at all.
Really, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
You should be proud of that, Ashton. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Penny, you said you put the offcuts of pastry into a plastic bag, and will they then, when you bring them out of the fridge, will they meld together into a round so that you can then roll them out again?
Yeah, I'll just squeeze them into shape and they'll do it, damn well told.
Okay.
What I'm actually going to do is I'll probably line some little tart tins, as I was saying earlier, cook them off and then freeze them. And, because otherwise I've got more pastry and tarts to do today than I can manage to eat in the next few days.
Yeah.
I like them actually with mushrooms. If you cook the mushrooms down either in the frying pan or with in the microwave, mushrooms are really nice if you caramelize them a bit, so which means you're getting them quite dry, and that's a delicious tart. And you can have it just by itself or with something else. Think about a Mediterranean tart. So you've got pieces of courgette, pieces of perhaps sun-dried tomato, some part cooked onion, so it's softened, a bit of garlic, some black olives, that in a little custard, the little custard, savoury custard, delicious, And do you remember we were talking about canapes, and people were asking about canapes?
Oh, yes, I remember.
Now.
Oh, brilliant, thanks.
Everything that we've been doing today, you can turn into a canapé if you have some little cases, or you make little pieces that you cut out of a big tart or a bigger tart. So you could have that little Mediterranean tartlet as a canapé. You could do the same with the asparagus and ham. You could do it with all, the leek tartlet. So you could have a whole range of these and just make them all up and fill them and cook them on the day. You could make all the pastry cases beforehand, and that's always the boring bit. So you could have a freezer full of little pastry cases all cooked off. On the day, you make half a dozen of each different flavour of your canapé, one egg and cream or creme fraiche sauce, throw it onto them all, toss them in the oven, done.
Yeah,
Nice
that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, super. Well, Penny, I don't know if there's any other questions. Are there any other questions, anyone?
No, thank you.
Okay.
So once again, Penny, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure to be in with the group. It's I'm a keen baker, so it's always good to hear other people's ideas. So thank you.
Next time we're going to try, because the apples will be coming in. If anybody's got apple trees, who's got friends or families with apple trees, we're going to make Christmas mincemeat.
Oh,
we'll
wow.
make an apple crumble.
Oh, yeah.
Lovely.
Okay, and with my own special crumble mix.
Oh.
I think I need to be on that one.
So we'll do that probably the second Monday in September, if we check our diaries and we're all free and everything.
Yes,
okay.
Well, I'm sure Zoe will send out the invites and we will get that up on Eventbrite in readiness. So I'll look at that date. I didn't, let me have a look at the date. Let's see what the second.
I was just having a look as well.
Second Monday of September would be the 13th.
Yes.
I need to check my diary, but I'll do that. Please spread the word. If you know anybody else who might be interested, please encourage them to come along, even if they just sit silently and laugh at us. It would be really super.
Yeah, more the merrier, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm just getting my tart out. Well, Alan's getting the tart out. How's it doing?
Still quite well, isn't it?
Still, right. Ours is going back in the oven. Ashton is much better than me. I wish you all a happy August and see you perhaps in September.
Yes, and you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Penny.
Very much,
Take care,
Penny.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye,
Bye.
Bye, Ellen.
Bye.
Other attachments.